I would like to introduce you to Professor Sally Eaves. Professor, do come onto stage. Thank you very much. And her plenary session. Hello, plenary session. Do come onto stage. Very nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank
Excellent.
You. Pleasure.
I love on your Twitter feed, Dr. Eaves.
Yes.
There's a load of science, there's a load of hashtags.
Yes.
And it just says simply innovating.
Absolutely, absolutely. I very much believe in innovation, bringing different aspects of technology, arts, creativity all together. So education and technology for me go hand in hand. So I like to be holistic. So yeah, I wanted to bring that to the fore rather than a specific discipline.
Fantastic. I am going to get the rest of your session.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, plenary. Do come onto stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is Dr. Sally Eaves' session. Good afternoon.
Pleasure.
Take a chair. Professor, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay. There we go.
But I wasn't in charge of that, was I? That's.
Okay. Ready to go? Okay. Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Sally Eaves. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Femi. Much appreciated. It's a real pleasure today to talk about technology and inclusion, specifically in relation to smart cities, a topic very close to my heart. I do a lot of work with the UN around tech for good, around STEAM learning, and around how we can apply emerging technology for sustainable social impact at scale. And we have a fantastic panel here today to bring some of these topics to life. And what we're going to do, everybody on the panel, literally from across the globe, which I love as well, very international panel here. We're going to really showcase some innovation and maybe ask some provocative questions. We really want you to get involved. Towards the end, there'll be kind of 15 minutes for you to do a Q&A around this as well, and I'll be reacting to some of what we're talking about here and bringing some questions and bringing some themes together too. So without further ado, we're going to have our very first presentation, which is my colleague here from Japan. And so it's a real pleasure to welcome you to the stage today, and I've loved our conversation earlier this morning. So this is the mayor. His name is Soichiro Takashima from Japan. I love your passion for really breaking down barriers to innovation. That's really comes strongly with our conversation earlier on this afternoon. Incredibly innovative. One of the most transformational young leaders in Japan, I would argue, in terms of politics and innovation. So I will hand over to you just to have the floor and bring to the fore what you want to say about this topic area. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. I'm Mayor of Fukuoka City, Japan, Soichiro Takashima. Smart technologies such as ICT, IoT, or AI can reduce gaps between citizens. But to turn this technology into the force for inclusion, today's theme, we need to make it available to many, not a few. Let me give you 3 examples from Fukuoka City, Japan. In Fukuoka City, we have a messaging app that is already popular among citizens. We utilize it to easily provide public services regardless of location. Also, if someone notices a problem with the roads or parks, they can use the app to easily report it to the city by sending location information and photos. Before this service, citizens had to visit or call City Hall. Now we can fix problems faster, and it also raises citizens' awareness about caring for their city. The second example, using sensors and IoT to care for our elderly. Japan is faced with an aging population and declining birth rate. In Fukuoka, we help all continue to live with peace in mind by providing temperature and humidity sensors in the home of all who are worrying about living alone. And we also provide GPS devices to monitor people with dementia who may wander. Third, and a top priority for us is to remove their concerns by POC demonstrations. For example, we can use self-driving technology for the old living in suburbs. But local residents, especially old, are worried by new technology. However, we recently tested a self-driving bus on public roads, and locals who rode it said it wasn't too fast, and they felt safe. Seeing is believing, isn't it? To quickly make such technology widely accessible to citizens, we should visualize it to feel citizens and regulators at ease. First, introduce it into a limited area, then spread the technology throughout the city, and then to the whole nation. But it is very difficult to find a place. It's difficult to change existing systems and infrastructure, so it's quicker to build new. In Fukuoka, we have such a place. It is a former university campus. The 50-hectare area is near the city center and has good access. Our city is also National Strategic Special Zone, and so can ease regulation in cooperation with the national government. This area will be a world-class super smart city. Advanced technology such as AI and IoT can provide citizens with futuristic lives and new business opportunities. I look forward to welcoming challengers from around the world to this innovative project. Muchas gracias.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And literally perfectly timed as well, so thank you very much for that. That's a wonderful start, thank you. And now I'd love to hand over now to Roland Busch, who's Deputy CEO and CTO of Siemens AG. And I'd love to hear more about what you want to showcase about this theme as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I do believe that dealing with cities and the challenges of cities in the future is of essence for human mankind. I mean, this is the places where most of the peoples are living. This is the places which are carrying the economy. Top 500 cities are already taking care of, I think, two-thirds of the GDP worldwide. This is increasing. This is where the places where jobs are created. At the same time, there's no big city in the world. If you fast forward the way our developed for the next 10 years, I think all of us will see that this will be a chaos. So therefore, we have to find a solution. Here comes a problem and we have many different customers at Siemens in the industrial space, energy space, you name it. At least the least innovative customers, I have to say, are cities. There are exceptions, I guess, but in most cases, these are the customers which are rather hesitant. What they do is they say, show me a place where your technology is working and I adopt it. But this is not the way how we can really drive innovation in cities. You really need cities who are moving forward. You wonder why. I think it's a little bit about the system, that you have to have the procurement laws, and then you have a little bit of uncertainty of mayors whether they really want to deploy technology, because sometimes it fails and then they have a problem. But we have to break that. How do we do that? Number one is, I guess, it's a proper way how you're leveraging an ecosystem. I talked about public-private partnership. This is an element. If you include then a proper planning and the people at the beginning and people from the very beginning too, then I think you're already one step closer. Second element, it's always people are saying, I mean, cities don't have the money. I'm wondering, because and most of the time they say, I mean, what is my argument to invest in a metro line where we know that there's only one metro line in the world who eventually is profitable, all the others are subsidized. At the same time, think about any big city, Tokyo, London, Paris, New York, Beijing, without a metro. Think about it. Would it be where it is? Would it have so many people? Would it have created so many jobs? There must be a business case behind. And we recently did a study where we figured out that the cost of losing the working time of people in commuting can be as high as 30% of the GDP of a city. Yeah. The best cities in the world are sitting on 9. So this is the bandwidth. And the last thing is really to talk about deploying the right technologies, finding the right technology partners. Also here I would talk about an ecosystem of partners which a city can grow in order to really deploy the latest technologies in a proper way, cost sensitive, and then make these technology work at cities. And this is what I would call an operating system for cities, deploying the technologies, digital technologies, and break down the silos.
Perfect. Thank you very much indeed. And our next speaker is all the way from New York City. This is John Paul Farmer, CTO of New York City, in fact, also a fantastic background at Microsoft and also a shared interest in politics as well. So I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here with all of you. I'm almost 6 months into this role as CTO of New York City, and I guess that makes me a grizzled veteran at this point, so I can no longer claim to be the new guy. One of the benefits we've had, though, is a very clear vision of what we're working to do. And Mayor Bill de Blasio has challenged us to ensure that New York City is the fairest big city in America. When you think about a challenge that's that bold, you've got to use all the tools at your disposal. And so we have to use technology if we want to see that come to fruition. And when I think about inclusion, we need to make sure that technology itself is inclusive. We need to make sure that people have access to these tools, that the tools are built in such a way that they include everybody. They're not for one gender, they're not for one group of people that might have a certain ability or disability. They're for everybody. But that's not enough. We also need to look at how we use technology to promote inclusion. So the technology itself has to be inclusive, but we then need to use these tools to promote inclusion throughout society, inclusion in education, in healthcare, in mobility. And so there are a few ways that we're doing that right now in New York City. The first one is something that I think we're all somewhat familiar with, and that's the digital divide. It's the fact that too many people, including too many New Yorkers, don't have access to internet connectivity. And that includes folks who don't have it at home, other folks who don't have it on the go. I think most of us in this room would agree that having connectivity at home and on the go is what makes you connected, what allows you to fully participate in life. It allows you to apply for jobs, it allows kids to do homework collaboratively online. It's increasingly important. And yet we've got far too many people who are disconnected. And so it's our job to address that gap. And sometimes it's an issue of infrastructure, sometimes it's an issue of affordability, sometimes it's an issue of inclusion. It's that people don't feel like going online is for them. They don't understand the value that it could have to them and to their family. Some people feel unsafe. And so digital divide is the first thing. Now related to that, especially those last points about digital inclusion, especially not feeling safe online, we're increasingly focused on digital rights. This idea of human rights in the internet age, digital rights. And last year here in Barcelona, New York City came together with the city of Amsterdam and with our host city here in Barcelona to create the city's coalition for digital rights. This coalition has now grown to over 50 cities around the world. And they're working together on their shared values to ensure that they are doing their part to protect their residents, their people's lives online, their human rights in the internet age. If you'd like to learn more, I'd suggest you go to citiesfordigitalrights.org, citiesfordigitalrights.org. There are a couple of things that we're doing specifically in New York City that follow on. One is we're pushing more and more moonshot challenges. This is essentially procurement innovation. And to do this, we have to engage. We have to engage with industry, we have to engage with academia, we have to engage with communities, folks who normally would not be responding to a request for proposals from a government agency. And we've seen great results. We've been able to put no-cost public Wi-Fi onto an island in New York City that hosts a lot of events. We've been able to put out over 100 charging stations for electric vehicles around the city as part of our climate action challenge. And most recently, we tackled the issue of cybersecurity for small businesses. There are 240,000 small businesses in New York City, yet most of them don't have the expertise, don't have the personnel, don't have the money to think about how to handle personally identifiable information more appropriately. And so instead of saying that we had the solution, we asked the question. And by doing that, we got 169 responses from all over the world, from 77 different cities, 18 countries, 5 different continents, responding to this question asked by New York City. And so we think that model, this model of moonshots, where we put a problem statement out there and we engage communities, is a way that, one, we can include so many more of the brightest minds in New York City, but all around the world, in answering these questions and helping us solve these hard problems. But it's not just industry or agencies that have solutions. The last example I'm going to give you is co-labs. Co-labs are neighborhood-based innovation labs, where we go to communities, specifically those communities that are historically under-resourced and too often overlooked. And we ask the people and the organizations in these communities, what are their priorities? What do they want to see? And based on those responses, we don't simply go procure that or buy that, we build it with the community. So this focus on co-design allows us to engage people for whom too often no one asks their opinion. No one asks what they want to see in their own backyard. An example of this just recently in Brownsville, which statistically is the poorest neighborhood in New York City, we've engaged the community on safety at night. And to do that, we've worked with youth and young adults on creating digital arts. So we've got children gaining skills, marketable skills, and having a great time doing it, creating artwork that then illuminates the block, illuminates their community, and makes it safer. And so those are a few examples of how we're looking at ensuring that technology is inclusive, because ultimately we're here at Smart City Expo World Congress, and we all have to agree that if it's a smart city, it has to be an inclusive city. That's what we're trying to do in New York City.
Perfect, thank you. I love that focus on listening. I couldn't agree more strongly with that. And last but most certainly not least, we have a colleague representing Latin America and the Caribbean. So Mr. Elkin Velásquez, who's from UN Habitat. And I'd love to hear more about your fantastic work. I've been following this quite closely for a while, so I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. If today was 20 July 2019, my presentation was certainly to be different. Perhaps concentrating in good pilot cases on inclusion in Latin America and the Caribbean. There is a number of those, I can assure you. But coming today, November 2019, and I'm sure that you are following the news, what is happening in Latin America and the Caribbean, the most urbanized region in the world. There is a crisis. So I need to change the conversation. I need to ask new questions for all of us here, for all of you there. Questions about what is it behind that we are not doing correctly in Latin America and the Caribbean cities? And perhaps this can be inspiring for other regions of the world. Without entering into the big, deep analysis of what is going on in Latin America, we identified at least the two main elements of this crisis. One is a crisis of vulnerability, and the other one is a crisis of aspirations / frustrations. This is a middle income region, but without a consolidated middle class. Therefore, all the efforts we did for inclusion, for reduction of poverty during the past 10 years were good. Number of people went out of poverty, arrived to a middle class, but very vulnerable. And when the economic growth changed, the path of economic growth changed, these people, this middle class, non-consolidated, is really having fears, anger. And this is what we are seeing now, the manifestation of that. Key question is, what do we need to do new, different to what we have been doing in the past, including for technological inclusion, for digital inclusion? This is a big question that I think we need to put on the table. The other point is that, of course, this middle class is comparing to the richest part of Latin American societies, and there is a big gap, there is huge aspirations, and perhaps there is also the thinking that our children needs to be better, in a better situation than we are, perhaps closer to the richest. And in doing this, I think, or in thinking in this way, we are also creating the behavior of market forces, the behavior of those providing solutions, trying to say, for instance, we have this solution and this could work the same in every single city, in every single family in Latin America and the Caribbean. And this is not the case. So just to put some elements on the table, perhaps in the form of questions for this very moment in Latin America and the Caribbean, I would ask first, are we really setting the basis for including everyone in its own circumstance, treating different what is different? I think we need to respond with boldness to this question. Second, are we really able doing the same to go to scale? Because one of the beautiful things of the digital revolution, the fourth revolution, is the fourth industrial revolution is about going to scale. But can we continue offering the same solutions for a number of very different groups that have very different needs? I think this is another question. And third, at least, three questions for the time being. Do we really have the capacities in the public institutional setting to respond to those needs? This is really what we think we need to put on the table in a responsible way to change the conversation and perhaps to find out what are the new alternatives. If we continue doing the same, believe me, it's not going to work. Evidence is talking, not me.
Perfect. Thank you very much indeed. I think that's a very good point there about changing the narrative. I think that comes across in a few things that relate to themes throughout today, actually. I think my first question, trying to think about everything you've said together, comes back to trust. So I think across the world at the moment, there's been research by Endelman Group. There's also been backed up by other groups as well. There's a 17 kind of global lack of trust, 17-year global lack of trust, and that's affecting all different types of businesses, from financial services even through to charities and social enterprise. So I think trust can be partly embedded through technology, like blockchain, for example, but also very much through culture and people. So we're thinking about the concept of smart cities. What's your view about embedding trust into what is a smart city, and maybe moving on from that to smart society? I know that's a very big concept in Japan, for example, and I'm very interested in smart home, smart city, smart society, how we bring these elements together, and maybe the talent and the skills aspect of that is one we could talk about in a bit more detail. So probably two questions there. So whoever would like to touch an area of that would be fantastic.
I mean, let me start on the trust. I do believe that there are a couple of elements about it. One is the trust in the politics, which I'm not going to touch.
Yes.
I leave that to others. I do believe that trust in technology, new technologies, particular digital technologies, that's something which is really a big issue, because it's about data, it's about personal data, which people might want to share, they might not want to share. And this is something which is very hard to control, and there's a certain level of mistrust, so to speak, because you see all the problems, some hacks, data getting somewhere. You have problems if your account is hacked. So, and that's something what we have to, let's say, reinstall. We have to reinstall the trust. This goes only if you have, number one, a proper governance that goes back to the city, what you allow in terms of technology, how do you treat the data, your personal data, and there are different ways to do that. Europe recently issued a law which makes it much more difficult. It has a counter effect, because our AI experts said, I need more data, then I can have better algorithms. But if you don't share them, you have another problem. But again, you have to deal with that. And then it goes back to the level of trust which you currently have, for example, in products. If you buy a product in Europe, you have a CE stamp, you know that this has a certain quality level. We have to do that on the same level for digitalization. That you say, if you buy a product and it has a certain stamp on it, you know that you can trust that this is properly managed and done.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Did you want to come? Yeah.
First, I speak in Japanese, and then my staff translate, maybe. Anyway, まずこういった技術を入れていくときに、スマートシティを作るという形でその大きなプランを見せるのではなくて、あくまでも課題ドリブン、つまり市民にそこに困りごとがあるということを解決していくんだと、そのためにいわゆるスマートシティは利用するものなんだっていうことを市民にお伝えすることが大事なんですね。 ですから例えば、今日本というのは人口減少になって、それでコミュニティバスを例えば回さなきゃいけないと言っても、これコミュニティバスだけで運行しては赤字になってしまうんですね。ですからこうしたものを解決するのが例えば自動運転の技術であったり、そういったことを実際にその課題ドリブンで見せていくというのはすごく市民にこうしたスマートシティを信頼いただける上で大事なキーワードだと思っています。
Thank you. Thank you.
My staff translates in English.
Is it on? How can we introduce technologies in the community? So it's no use to make a big plan like coding. We're gonna develop a smart city. We will fail. What is most important is the solution. We need to focus more on the problems and how to solve that problems, and then we need a smart technology. So the key is to make our citizens understand well we need that technology. For example, in Japan, the population is decreasing, so we will face a shortage of labor. And for example, when we need to operate a community bus, we will face a shortage of labor, and whenever we have the community bus, the operation will be in red. So in that field, we can have autonomous technology with self-driving bus technology, and the key is to make citizens why we need that smart technology.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, let me say something on this very important point. A lot of people have, of course, all of us hope about the future, and we keep in telling, let us wait for the future that will come. But in today's situation, we need solutions also at the moment. We were working with a community in a neighborhood in Medellin, Colombia, that doesn't have necessarily the same possibilities to manage data as we do have in an institution, as we do have in the municipality or in the university. But they do manage data, other type of data. By the standards we utilize in our institutions, that data, that information would not be that utilizable. Let us utilize that way, that word. What we are trying to do is to facilitate the conversation between different typology of data, different typologies of categories of knowledge. In other words, people can tell the story about urban development, about neighborhood development in their own ways. And we need to take the responsibility to facilitate through different platforms kind of transmedia storytelling, facilitation of those conversations. Vernacular knowledge, vernacular data, non-consolidated data can be as useful and as important to take bold decisions as the big data, the big data that we are working. And I think our capacity to facilitate this conversation in a society that is unequal, where there is people that doesn't have nowadays, perhaps the kids in 10 years will have, but nowadays they don't have, they need really to feel included in this process. And this is not happening. We need really to, I think, to be bolder in facilitating this kind of conversation, people with different capacities to manage data and to produce, to generate knowledge.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Sally, I want to get back to the question as you started it, which was about trust.
Yes.
And in the United States, this is something that we've been seeing for a while, unfortunately. In the 1960s, Pew Research polled the American public and found that 77% had faith in their government institutions. That number is now 13 or 15%. 77% to mid-teens. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And some of those might be probably the media ecosystem, the proliferation and then fragmentation of how we get information. That all plays a role. I would argue that services play a role too. The growing divide between the experience that someone has getting services from the private sector versus what they get from their own government. And that's something that we can fix. That's something that we can address, and it's something that we are addressing. But we need to do more, because the trust that people put in their government has to be backed up by action. It has to be backed up by what we deliver to them.
Absolutely.
And increasingly, we need to be able to serve people where they are. And I mentioned earlier the digital divide, and that's an important problem that we are addressing. And as we address that, it will enable us to reach more and more people online. But the reality is the majority of people in our community are already online. And we should be reaching them on their mobile phones, just the way they get information or services in the rest of their life.
Absolutely.
So I think that's one big part of how we start rebuilding trust. Another piece of it, though, is around education. And it's around the skills that we get disseminated throughout society, whether we're talking about teaching kids how to code, which is obviously a great idea, and we promote it. We've got CS for all in the education system in New York City. But that's not enough, because there are a lot of people who aren't in 5th grade or 10th grade or high school now. And how are we reaching them? How are we helping them understand the data privacy, data usage policies that they're signing up to? I think very few people feel comfortable with aspects of how their data certainly is being used and collected, partially because they don't understand it. And if we could help promote better understanding and give people more of a say, and make sure that they know that their government is responding to what they want it to be doing in terms of regulation and legislation, then we can start rebuilding that trust. If we do services and we do education, that can go a long way toward helping to at least start addressing that gap that we see in terms of trust in society.
I couldn't agree more with that. For me, it's all about opening up access to opportunities. So that starts with education and awareness, and also around access to digital literacy and financial literacy too. We've got 1.7 billion people in the world that are unbanked or underbanked. Again, I think we can make a massive difference around those themes as well. But education for me, education and tech go literally hand in hand. And I'll come back to something right on the wrap-up on that one. But one other quick question before we go to the audience. Something that somebody was mentioning to me literally as we were walking in here is about how we manage all this big data. And as we have the introduction of 5G, as we get more integration across different technologies, this is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So how do we filter that? How do we get to the valuable data? How can we reuse data too? So at the moment, like 90%, I think it is, of data that is archived is never used again. So we've got a massive potential here. And I think for smart cities personally, to really maximize that, we have to get a handle and manage that data to optimize it. So I think my final question before we go into the audience is, has anybody in the panel got a specific thought around that particular area?
How to manage the data?
Yeah.
I can start. There's number one is that we, and this goes back to what has been said, that I do believe that the amount of people who have digital skills has to increase substantially over time. And this is the big challenge, in particular in aging societies. It's sometimes difficult to have people in an aging society and to train them on latest technology, firstly. Secondly, the cycle time of digital technologies is shorter, meaning that the learning cycles have to be faster. So that means we are coming to you learn something in school and then you deploy thereafter. We're coming to a system where you have to constantly learn and keep up to date. So these are a lot of elements which would help. This alone doesn't do the trick. There's another trend which I see, and now I'm getting a little bit technically here, that it will not be the case that all the data which are generated will be uploaded in the cloud and stored somewhere. And we don't want to have that. Currently already a substantial amount of energy is consumed in data center. Think about that we store everything. That doesn't work. What will happen is you will have a lot of, we call it pre-processing in the edge. That means you're gathering data, but there's enough intelligence sitting on the ground, on the floor, on the shop floor, in the manufacturing side, pre-processing the data, doing all the tricks which you need to do, and just sending those data back to the cloud which are necessary to store, which reduces the amount of data by a big fraction, so to speak. So this is something which I do believe will be a combination of increasing the skills and the amount of people, on the other side making the systems then smarter so that you don't have to dump everything into the cloud, which will not work.
Thank you.
そうしたデータを統合していくときにすごく大事になってくるのがなんていうか、これは例えば自治体がどれぐらいIT リテラシーが高いかということもすごく大事で、それでいろんな企業のいろんなデータっていうのを、例えばもしくは自治体が出したデータっていうのを一つの例えば企業がそれを なんていうか、全体をマネジメントするってなった時に、例えばじゃあ、そのマネジメントする企業の関連会社の要するにスマートテクノロジーばかりを集めるわけにもいかないしっていうところは自治体としてすごく悩みです。で、実際今日もたくさんこのスマートシティの、企業がたくさん出てますが、これをじゃあどこの地域でどう実装するのかっていうまだエリアがなくて、だからこれをやっぱりこのみんな素晴らしい発表を今日たくさんスマートシティしてるんですが、これを実際に実装できる現場、つまり自治体とどうやっぱりうまくその自治体のリテラシーも上げながらそれを一緒になって作っていけるかが大事だと思います。世界中で今スマートシティっていっぱい言ってるけど、実際にいろんなレイヤーでいろんなスマートなテクノロジーが重なったエリアってまだないので、こういうものをやっぱりこう一つやっぱ作っていくのはすごく大事だと思うので、福岡はそれを作っていこうと思っていますが、世界にこういうモデルケースのような場所がたくさんできるってやっぱすごく大事だなというふうに思っています。
So the key is how to integrate the various ideas. All over the world, each city has a great idea to make a smart city. But the problem is we don't have such area to introduce the new technologies. And when I go around this conference site, and I saw several or many great booths with great ideas. However, the problem is not so many cities has the high literacy of technologies. So the first point is that each city needs to have a high technology literacy. And the second point is we need to have the suitable round or suitable city to introduce the new technology very smoothly. Fukuoka City would like to be one of the model city to have the advanced technology as the first model case or first best practices.
We have to talk.
Oh, go ahead. Okay, I'll go. So to quickly add on, I think the flip side of data privacy, very important issue, is data poverty, also an important issue that we don't talk about as much. The fact that individual people or even groups of people are too often overlooked and not represented in the data. And that also goes to the fact that certain government agencies might have access to a robust set of data that is representative, but another government agency doesn't have access to the same data. And so we have to get better at breaking through these silos and at ensuring that we're including people appropriately, protecting their privacy where appropriate, but also including them where appropriate to ensure that we serve people better.
30 years ago, of course I was younger, and there was a song of Los Prisioneros de Chile. The name of the song is El Baile de los que Sobran, the dance of the left behind. And it was about the young people studying 12 years, but getting no opportunity after the study years. And then recently, that was exactly the same song in the demonstrations in Santiago de Chile. I want to say that education, of course, is key, but it needs to be connected with the other elements of the value chain of productivity, inclusion, and so on, ecosystems. You guys talk a lot about ecosystems, and in New York, in Barcelona, in Mexico City, it's easier to think about that. What about the intermediary cities? I think we need there an opportunity, a challenge, but also an opportunity to think what are the ecosystems where we need to combine the right education with all the data that we need for young people to utilize, because it's not available, as you said, for all and everyone. And then the possibility to have the angels, the ecosystem of funds, to create really a value chain. I think this is something that is doable. There are some elements in different parts of the world, some examples that can be, of course, taken, but still, I want to insist, doing piloting is not enough. We really need to think together, how do we go to scale, but not to reproduce the same model, to treat different what is different. The education in this sense, of course, is critical.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And at that point, before we close, would like to really hand it over to the floor for any Q&A to anything we've discussed or we might have missed from the conversation? So we'd like to hand it over to you. Thank you very much. There should be 3 equally placed microphones throughout the room, so feel free to come forward. Thank you.
shy.
If not. And if not, I will follow up with one of my own questions, so that might be worse. I'm sorry if that's the case, but okay. Anything? Okay, in that case, I'll throw probably one more, unless anything comes from the audience, I'll throw one more question in myself. So, going back to measurement of progress. Now, I know Siemens, for example, has done some really brilliant work. I've seen some great metrics around how we can compare different smart cities and different metrics around that, around mobility, for example. There's also, I think it's a digitalization axis, if I've got that right. But I'd love to see maybe, because we've got two great examples of two major cities here who are doing fantastic work, a lot of technology and measurement, and also from your perspective as well, which I love, particularly around aspiration and education. So maybe some final thoughts about what we can learn from one another, success stories, and bringing this together so that rather than repeating mistakes, we can maximize the opportunity and actually repeat all the good stuff that's happening in the best practice. So how we can do that, because I've seen different ways this has been measured, but I think sometimes they can be a little bit siloed. So how can we bring that together? Bring people to the fore, but collaborate better and share the best practices rather than duplicate effort.
You want to start?
I'm happy to kick it off. So when I was in the Obama White House, this is back in around 2012, we were so eager to do the work and to use technology and innovation to improve people's lives that I think we overlooked some of the measurement. We knew what our goals were. We knew what we were trying to do. We were trying to ensure that we saved lives, that we saved taxpayer dollars, that we fueled job growth. But in terms of the putting in place of the measurement, I think that's where we fell down a little bit. And folks a few years later tried to play catch up, but sometimes it's hard to go back and recreate an A/B test and figure out exactly what would have happened in an alternate universe where you didn't do things the way you did. And so I think that's one of the lessons that I learned from my prior experiences. And now in this role in New York, we're putting in place how we are measuring our work at the very time that we're beginning the work. And I think that's just a best practice that I've learned from my own experiences, and now we're doing in New York.
Thank you. Okay, go for it. Yeah.
I wanted to put on the table also another perspective, and it's people with disabilities. We're going to talk social inclusion, technological and digital inclusion, because number of the solutions to make easier people with disabilities to be included come from technologies. Okay, but it needs first to be aware that we need to adapt our current systems of planning, our current systems of budgeting, our current systems of designing public policies. We work with a partner that is called World Enable. Perhaps some of you know them, Victor Pineda, very well known in Latin America. And we received an analysis, a study about number of projects in the world, development projects and public policies, and how these projects are or not sensitive to include or to integrate this perspective of people with disabilities. 4% of those projects coming from a number of institutions that work in social inclusion and so on. So I think there is still an extra mile that we need to really continue pushing, is identifying those groups that are not having this visibility. I like it very much. Yesterday someone mentioned it here from the organization. They need to make visible the invisible. And I think what we are talking about here, technological inclusion, goes first, or need to go first through this very idea of making visible what is invisible. Otherwise, it's like if nothing was needed to be done in that case.
Exactly, I couldn't agree more. Any fine, did you want to? Yeah.
例えば福岡の場合はさっきも言いましたけれども、例えば住所を登録しておけばアプリで毎日あなたは今日は燃えるゴミの日ですよ、燃えないゴミの日ですよ、それから今日は、あなたが住んでいるところはこうですよという情報が全部届くし、ゴミを出したければその予約から料金の支払いまで全部携帯一つで福岡市はできます。でもお隣の市はできないわけですね。こういう 自治体の IT リテラシーによって住民サービスに今ものすごく差が出るような時代になって、でこれはこれでその無理やり揃えようじゃなくって、こういうものを見せていくロールモデルを作っていくっていうことが他の都市の住民からどうしてうちの市はできないんだっていうようなことになって、住民の中でやっぱりこういいサービスが見えてくると、もっとうちもやってくれっていうふうになるんですね。だからやっぱり若い首長がこれからもっともっと大事になってくると思うし、 IT リテラシーっていうところも投票する上ですごく大事になってくるんじゃないかな。そういうところが今日例えばスマートシティのいろんなプレゼンをしている企業の皆さんのいいものをね、各都市に落とし込んでくれるんじゃないかなというふうに思っています。
2 points from me. The important is the world needs to have the more young leaders with high IT literacy. For example, in Fukuoka cities, we provide an app related to the waste management. Once our citizens input their actual address in the app, the city will inform automatically, today is the day for you to, you can dispose this type of waste. And tomorrow you can dispose this type of waste. Or if you like, you can reserve waste disposal for the large size of waste, and you can make a payment with this app. If our citizen has one smartphone, they can manage all kinds of waste management public service with that app. However, compared our city with some neighboring cities do not have such service. So it depends on the IT literacy of each municipality. And I think it is very important for our city to show new technology can change the world as a model city. And if other cities can learn from us, their citizens will be focused on why can we have the same service? We live nearby. And this type of activities may prompt other neighboring cities or other cities in Japan to focus much more on introducing new technologies. So new readers and high IT literacy would be my point.
Right. Well, from my perspective, I think one thing is I really appreciate if cities are exchanging their experiences, and some smart mayors, they're saying, I'm proud to copy, taking good solutions, carrying over. I think that's a smart way. The other one is that we always talk about the big cities, which we are working with too, but I love more to work with the medium-sized cities because there are more of them, and the probability, once you have a solution, to multiply to the others is much, much higher. So therefore, that's a very good thing. And we are trying, of course, to productize our solutions, so you have a chance to really bring them as fast as possible to cities. And last thing, what we do is also that we are, obviously we're working globally in 200 countries in the world. That means we're bringing a lot of experience where we see so many different solutions, which we might bring a good one to the respective city. And the last thing what we do is, we did, for a couple of years ago, we invented the Green City Index for cities. I was talking about a study with Credo about traffic and transport, where we benchmarked so many cities and how they are doing in terms of moving people in a city. What is the share of GDP they are losing in terms of productivity? You learn a lot, and then you can draw conclusions, but you also get a hint who is doing best and how you can connect. So, but I do believe stimulating the innovation speed at cities is one of the big opportunities which we have.
Wonderful, thank you. I know we're out of time now, so thank you very much to the marvellous panel here. It's been a real pleasure, and I think one closing sentence really showcases digital transformation and societal transformation can go hand in hand, and education and tech, they must be combined. It's all about coming together, and I know I've been waved at, so we've got to end there, but thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.